On today's World Insight, a mission toward the world's sustainable, green future under the United Nations banner, in the efforts and words of former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, whose foundation seeks to carry out the UN's Sustainable Development Goals and climate action.
Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei. The United Nations has wrapped up its Summit of the Future over the weekend. The UN General Assembly approved a blueprint to bring the world together, turning promises into actions through Pact for the Future. Last Friday in Beijing, I had an exclusive conversation with former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. Under his leadership, the UN member states adopted the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, otherwise known as SDGs, an effort toward a more equitable and green future. While the world nears the halfway mark of the 2030 timeline, the question on the progress of these goals is ever more critical. Mr. Ban has been a vocal advocate for peace and multilateral cooperation in fixing global challenges. After his retirement from the role of UN Secretary General, through the Ban Ki-moon Foundation named after him, he works to foster leadership for implementation of SDGs and the Paris Climate Agreement. I spoke to him on the day when the foundation announced the opening of its Beijing office. Mr. Secretary General, what a pleasure to see you once again. Congratulations for the establishment of the China office of the Ban Ki-moon Foundation.
Xie, thank you for your very kind words of congratulations. I'll do my best to contribute what I have been doing as a former Secretary General, and also, more importantly, while working as a Secretary General of the United Nations, to promote the better world for all. We are suffering from all different problems, starting from climate change and lack of support, lack of implementation of Sustainable Development Goals with the 17 goals, and also human rights and the women's empowerment. And look at how much frustrations these young generations are feeling. So I feel very much, morally sorry for all what is now happening, so I'll do my best.
During your tenure, you were very instrumental in realizing the common aspiration of setting the SDG 17 goals as the common goals for everyone in the world. But we see the speed of realization and implementation far from satisfaction. As the Secretary General of the time when the goals were designed, what is your reaction to the current reality?
Now, I'm proud to have brought all world's leaders and people of the world and to join their hands together to promote a better world for all. That is in the form of Sustainable Development Goals with 17 goals. As far as I know, and as far as the world recognize, that this SDG is by far the most proactive, most far-reaching commitment the United Nations has ever made during its history until almost 8 years now.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to tell you that less than 20% of the promises have been achieved now. The target year is now just 5 years ahead. Then I have been discussing this matter with the current Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, and other senior officials of the United Nations. Look, we may not be able to achieve as the United Nations has promised to the world's people. Therefore, there should be some successor vision before we hit the target by 2030.
I see.
Less than 20% has been achieved by this time. Can can we achieve all this rest of the more than 80% of promises by 2030? I don't think it is practically not possible. I sincerely hope that by at least at the latest by next year, the world leaders, after having very serious discussions this year, by next year, they will have to present the successor vision of these Sustainable Development Goals. Maybe it may be called SDG 2 or whatever may be called. That's my personal suggestion.
Thank you for your insightful look into the current realities. But one could feel the dissatisfaction the public have about the lack of momentum to implement these goals, because these goals are very important. And for the past years, the public has been devoting their attention to the realization of these goals. So what is the problem now?
SDG goal number 3 is about the public health.
Yes.
It says there should be no one who should die from preventable diseases. I think we should have a much better treatment for those people who are suffering from all this. I know that, unfortunately, there are some diseases which even 21st century medical technology cannot cure 100%. But most of the diseases, we can handle it. But look at all these people living in tropical diseases, suffering from tropical diseases. Because they cannot make money, the pharmaceutical companies and scientists, they do not make proper medicines for those people because they cannot sell them. That's why there should be much broader support for those people. I really hope that rich countries, they should invest more on these public health issues.
When you talk about political leaders, you were very outspoken.
Yes.
Over the years about what should be the responsibilities of political leaders today. You criticize them for being short-sighted, for only focusing on election cycles. Mr. Secretary General, I know that you have been working around the clock in the world with your foundation, for example, reaching out to these political leaders. But what do you think can be the path for change?
First of all, I hope that all the political leaders who are elected by the people of their own country should promise what they had promised to the people during a campaign process. But as soon as they are elected, they just have to forget what they had done. Mm-hmm. I've been always urging the global leaders, please have a global vision, global citizens. You are not alone. We are all this together. If we do not take any action now, we will all die together. There's nobody who will be free from all this kind of current 21st century crisis. Before being called global leaders, they should have a global leadership and global vision, not only for their own people, for all the people of the world.
When you say this to them, what did they say back?
They would say, Secretary General, I fully support what you say, but just let me be re-elected. When I re-elected, I will do what you told me to do. Well, what can I say? So they have a very short political mind only. This is something which I regret very much. I have met so many of those kind of leaders. That's why we are still suffering from wars and poverties and diseases, and there are so many people who should die without any reasons.
Now the economy is pretty much fragmented. Some places things are going really up, but in most places, things are flat or even down. So this is a big mixture of different factors. When you talk to the political leaders, when you urge political leaders to be more global, to have global vision and serve the public, how do you see these factors are having on their choices? And meanwhile, what do you think both international organizations like the United Nations and others can do in order to bring the world once again better, at least together?
The United Nations is just a sum of whole member states. Without the full engagement and support and promise what they had promised, United Nations cannot do it alone. There is nothing which one can do it alone. So we have to put all our hands on the deck together. That we have to cooperate all together. That's why I've been sending out this message all the times to all world leaders. They claim that I'm one of the global leaders, but at best, I can tell you that they are just local leaders, not more than local leaders. That's what I feel very sorry and I regret. That's why so many people unnecessarily either die or suffer from preventable diseases and left out of their jobs, left out of the schools. So that's why so many young generations, so young people who should lead our world to a much, much better, prosperous way are just left out of all this process. That's why I sincerely hope that particularly a big power that the United States and China will really harmonize their relationship. Then that will really help implementing Sustainable Development Goals and also the climate change agreement. I've been speaking out many times examples what President Xi Jinping did in September 2016. Before the opening of the Hangzhou G20 summit meeting, just one day before, he invited President Obama and myself, only two of us. What they did, the President Xi Jinping initiated by presenting me to the Secretary General of the United Nations, the certificate of the ratification of the Paris Climate Change Agreement. Then President Obama presented the US government's ratification paper. I understand that President Xi Jinping and President Obama must have discussed this matter between the two leaders. Let us lead by example. You know what happened? The Paris Climate Change Agreement needed, at the time, at least 55 countries ratified with 55% of the global emissions secured. China and United States, two countries, has taken care of 42% of the global emission out of 55% required. So that was very easy. By November 3rd, this Paris Climate Change Agreement came into effect. I sincerely hope that there should be more stronger, closer coordination when it comes to global agendas like the SDGs and climate change agreement, and also human rights issues, and among them, women's empowerment and the gender empowerment as well as youth empowerment. Those are 3 or 4 most critical issues which we must address in the name of humanity. There is no China, there is no United States or Korea. There is only one world, one humanity. And this has been my message.
Since the Paris Agreement, green transformation has been taking place in the world. But here comes to the hard part. When it comes to really implementation of the goals, you heard about complaints of so-called climate justice rising, mainly coming from developed economies, suggesting that they are afraid the supply chain will be away from their economies. They're afraid that, for example, the car manufacturing will be replaced by EVs, which is not the best advantage for them for now. Mr. Secretary General, how do you see this very interesting one example along the way of implementing the visions, and we are seeing bumps like this?
Now, when it comes to all these global issues and inequality or issues, those countries, developing countries who have contributed the least to the current phenomena, they are the ones who are affected most of all this climate phenomena. Therefore, it is morally right and politically right, also scientifically correct to help those developing countries. That's why during my time, the United Nations has created Green Climate Fund, GCF. In 2009, the global leaders in Copenhagen have promised that they would provide $100 billion a year, every year. Therefore, I've been urging, keep your promise, provide the necessary fundings so that this Green Climate Fund can provide necessary technologies and financial support to all those developing countries so that they can be together with the developed countries to denuclearize whole this planet Earth. Many scientists, they predict and warn us that within 100 years, we may face the 6th mass extinction. Therefore, I'm just warning and alerting the leadership of the whole world to do much, much more. I hope that China will lead this campaign, working together with the United States and European Union. Then I think we'll be able to do much, much better and more to make sure that our planet Earth continues to exist as well as our humanity. This is, I think, their political and moral responsibility. Yeah.
I just want to follow up on that because the issue of electronic vehicles, EVs, are occupying the headlines around the world. It is about geopolitics, it is about the trade issue, it is about the climate change, and it is about what some call so-called climate justice. So how do you see this has become the center of debate? Is it rightly being shaped?
Of course, in this industrialized society where you have to use airplanes, cars, trains, or whatever, all this mechanics, industrialization process, all they must use decarbonized clean energy. The European Union had announced already that starting from 2035 under the CBAM, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, they will not allow or heavily tax those cars without electricity cars. Americans will do the same things. Therefore, I understand that starting from many industrialized countries, including Korea, my own country, have begun to make
speed up the process.
Electric cars and decarbonize all these automobiles and any transportation vehicles. Yeah.
You have been very vocal, particularly recent 2 years, about the welfare of the children in the conflict zones. And the latest reports suggest that children in the conflict zones have been violated and the case is particularly rampant in the Gaza Strip related to Israel-Gaza conflict. Mr. Secretary General, the question is how? There are clear international agreement and principles that children's rights should be protected even in conflict zones, and yet we see them once and again being violated. I really want to ask for your expertise as to what can be done about this.
Recently, during the last 2 years, first I visited Ukraine, and then 1 year ago, just before October 7th war between Hamas and Israel, I visited as a member of the elders, Israel and Palestine. And I saw with my own eyes and what was happening in Ukraine. I went there after the war had broken out. And I went to Israel and Palestine just 3 months before this crisis happened. So I have spoken out to the leaders as well as media, global media, that they must stop all these fightings in the name of humanity. They must stop, whatever the cause may be, then work out their peace plans. This is what I have been speaking out to global media. Of course, they carry it, but it's the matter of global leaders still. I think they must sit down together and try to work out how they can stop, first of all this fighting, and work for much more for women and young people and just the civilian people who die needlessly without any reason because of all these political reasons. Therefore, I hope that the United Nations should really this campaign much stronger way, working together with global leaders.
Especially right now when you see the interesting phenomenon of the rise of what some call the global south. This interesting phenomenon, how is it likely to support the common vision and implement also actions related to SDG?
Now, we have, as you said, common visions agreed upon at the United Nations. All the leaders joined their hands together on this commitment. The problem is political commitment must be implemented as promised. Because of a lack of such implementation of their promises, we are suffering. Now, as I said many times in the past, I've been speaking to, in Asia, there are just 2 countries, China and Japan, who have been providing such support to developing world. Now, Korea has emulated this and followed. Last May, the Korean president has initiated again the Korea African Development Forum summit meeting. So I sincerely hope that rich countries like China, Japan, Korea will work closely. Of course, they have their own plans, but all these plans can be better coordinated. Then we will have a much better and more results coming from this.
In your book, Resolve, I noticed that you are not shy in putting out attributions coming from others. In fact, every page is full of names, not yours, but others. It seems that you cherish very much the allies, quote unquote, that you have over the years established relation and friendship with. And also you cherish the camaraderie of people you have met. How did you manage to do that, Mr. Secretary General? And how do you think it is of tremendous importance today in order to implement all of the earlier visions?
What I learned is that when we put our hands together, you and me and everybody on the deck, then I think there is nothing which we cannot overcome. And that has been my message. That is well contained in Sustainable Development Goals. And much stronger vision has been already placed in the Paris Climate Change Agreement. Paris Climate Change Agreement is a treaty, international treaty, so it must be implemented. That's a duty. Of course, the Sustainable Development Goals is a political agreement, so it may not be a treaty, but it's a global promises made by the whole world's leaders. Therefore, I sincerely hope that world leaders work together closely, just get away from all these political disputes. I know that this global world, there are a lot of problems or differences of views, but in front of all these global challenges facing the humanity, like climate change and abject poverty and diseases, pandemics, then we have to work together. There's nothing else. That's my appeal again, and I will do my best as much as I can through this modest foundation, like representative office of the Ban Ki-moon Foundation, to work not only with only Chinese people, but for the better world. Yeah.
Mr. Secretary General, what a pleasure seeing you, and congratulations for the establishment of the Beijing Representative Office of the Ban Ki-moon Foundation. All the best.
I thank you very much, and I count on your strong support. Thank you.
That's my latest exclusive conversation with former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon on the day when the Beijing office of the Ban Ki-moon Foundation opened. Over the weekend, the United Nations just concluded its Summit of the Future. That's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to know more, search World Insight or check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on X and Facebook. I'm Tian Wei. On behalf of the team, thanks for being with us. Bye for now. I'll see you tomorrow.